Alright, hello everybody. Friendly Red here, and welcome back to News Peruse. Yesterday, Atlus held a showcase for their upcoming new JRPG, Metaphor ReFantazio, and I wanted to go over some of what we saw in that showcase. I'll leave a link to the original video if you want to check it out fully for yourself, which I'd recommend if you want to get the full rundown on what they shared. With that, let's get into it. Perhaps before we get into the showcase, it may be best to briefly mention what exactly Metaphor ReFantazio is. Technically, this game was announced all the way back in late 2016, though at the time in its early stages we knew it only as Project ReFantasy. The game was being helmed by one Katsuro Hashino, who previously worked on a lot of other big Atlus titles, most notably as director for SMT 3 and Persona 3, 4, and 5. The initial unveil also showed that two other heavy hitters were on board for this new game, those being Shigenori Sojima and Shoji Meguro. Sojima served as the main character designer for the previous Persona games Hashino directed, while Meguro was the composer for them. Now, if you've played any of the modern-day Persona titles, you know they have amazing character portraits and designs, as well as some banging tunes throughout. Even in this announcement didn't have much to show or say, this info alone assured us that the project was in some very good and talented hands. However, outside the initial announcement that the project was underway, there wasn't really too much else news-wise regarding the game for quite some time. All we knew was it was a fantasy RPG that was being made by some very experienced individuals. In fact, it wasn't until June of last year that we finally got a proper re-unveiling of the game, going under its new official title, Metaphor ReFantazio. While this still wasn't a lot, it did give us some glimpses as to how the game would look and play, and it for sure left an immediate impression that left me and many others wanting to know more. Fast forward to April 2024, and we find ourselves here at the Metaphor ReFantazio Atlus exclusive showcase. This was an almost 30-minute show dedicated to finally giving some actual concrete details about the game, story premise, characters, world, and yes, combat. The show started with a new trailer that confirmed the release date for the game, that being October 11th, and was followed by some info divulged by the previously mentioned Katsuro Hashino, who's directing this game. Hashino first gave a brief overview of the game's story. In the game, after the death of the current ruling king, a special magic triggers an election for the next king to be decided, and this election seems to allow any and all volunteers to try their hand at obtaining the throne. This of course leads into the protagonist joining the election, which begins the journey and game as a whole. So, how exactly does ReFantazio play? Well, like a lot of other recent Atlus JRPGs, it seems it'll be structured around a set time limit, and within the designated times you have, you'll need to complete specific story objectives to progress. Of course, there seems like there will be plenty of side activities sprinkled throughout as well, meaning you'll really need to pay attention to what you want to do and how much time you have to do it. It seems like there will be three major kinds of zones to explore in ReFantazio, that being towns, fields, and the dungeons of the game. It's also stated that the game is not open world and will presumably be made up of large segmented maps and zones that you access via an in-game menu or map, similar to something like Persona 5 or this year's Persona 3 Reload. The towns seem like your typical fantasy game affair. You can walk around, talk to citizens, obtain side quests and bounties, and use any shops or other amenities that may be in the town. One thing I do like that they highlighted here is that you can sometimes find informants within taverns, and you can pay them to divulge info about things going on around the world, as well as, quote, hints about dungeons and battle strategies. A small thing, but pretty cool and effective way of world building, I'd say. Next up is the fields, or as they call them, wastelands. Traversing them on foot would be too dangerous and also take way too long, which is why we'll be using a vehicle known as the Gauntlet Runner to fix that. The Gauntlet Runner is really taking the idea of a mobile home to the next level. These massive constructs not only serve as your main method of travel between major cities, but they also act as your base of operations, or hub. After you choose the destination you want to travel to, you can freely explore the Gauntlet Runner's interior and make use of any stations that are within it. It seems most similar to Persona 3's Iwatodai dorms, but, well, on wheels. Or, legs? In the showcase, we see it has a kitchen where you can make food for presumably battles, a common room where you can talk to and bond with your allies, beds, a washing area, and what looks like an armory, or maybe some sort of other storage room. You can also go onto the outside of the runner and see it moving around in real time, which is pretty cool. And finally, the dungeons, which is where we also get to talk about the most exciting part about the game, the combat. Firstly, they actually have a whole little section regarding the user interface, basically saying how they wanted to make sure it looks beautiful and appealing as you spend a lot of time in menus in JRPGs. And yeah, much like Persona 5, its many spin-offs, and Persona 3 Reload, ReFantazio continues the trend of Atlus UI artists going way too goddamn hard on the menus. Anyways, onto the combat. And ever since the reveal of the game last year, one thing that really stood out to me about this game was how it was seemingly mixing not only Atlus's tried and true turn-based battle system, but real-time hack and slash combat as well. I was curious to know more about how this works in game. Thankfully, we got that info here. As you explore in a dungeon and come across enemies, you can scan them to see how they rank against you and your party. But from here, you can begin attacking them in real time on the field using a mix of melee attacks and dodges, and it seems like if they're weak enough, this should be enough to deal with them outright. However, as you are engaged in battle, a prompt remains on screen that you can activate at any time, which will lead into turn-based battles. From here, it's pretty typical looking as far as Atlus games go, with a super stylish menu for your in-battle controls, which include much of what you'd find in Persona or SMT, as well as intricate spell and attack animations, cut-ins, splash screens, and the like. You can make use of melee attacks, items, guard, pass up your turn, or use magic and skills with the help of your chosen archetype. Archetypes seem to be ReFantazio's name for what are essentially classes, akin to those you'd find in something like Final Fantasy or Dragon's Dogma. You can acquire different archetypes throughout the game, and equipping them to your characters grants you access to different skills and effects you can use in battle. It also doesn't seem like there will be any restrictions on these archetypes, so once you have them, you can equip them on any party members as much as you'd like, as they demonstrate having a party made up of only brawlers, for example. It seems like it'll be a fairly flexible system, and I'm looking forward to trying out a bunch of different combos and archetypes once the game releases. At the end of this section, they mention that ReFantazio will contain both main story dungeons as well as optional ones, and as a whole, the game will have the most dungeons of any of Atlus's previous titles, so there should be plenty of opportunities to really explore the combat and test it out as much as you like. After all this, we return to Hoshino one last time to talk about pre-orders for the game opening, as well as details about the game's physical collector's edition, which I may or may not have already pre-ordered. He also mentions here that Metaphor ReFantazio serves as a sort of anniversary title for Atlus, as it is releasing during the company's 35th year, which is pretty cool. I think it's shaping up to be another stellar title from them, and I certainly can't wait to get my hands on it this October. And that was the Metaphor ReFantazio exclusive showcase. It's great to finally have some more concrete info about the game and its structure, and between it, Persona 3 Reload, Unicorn Overlord, and SMT 5 Vengeance, looks to be yet another solid JRPG in Atlus's lineup for 2024, and potentially a Game of the Year contender? We'll see. Hope I was able to condense the info down and relay both it and my thoughts on it well, and I hope you also look forward to its release this fall. But I think that'll do it for this video. If you made it to the end, I greatly appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.